So now we're at our cutting table, and let's just go through a few key elements you need besides your fabric to get started with this. The first thing is you'll want to make sure you have a good cutting service. I would invest in a good cutting mat rather than buying something that's not at that quality, because you'll go through it really fast. And go through it, I mean you'll have lots of cut marks. Then you'll need a rotary cutter, and I prefer the 60mm. I just like a larger, and I also have an ergonomic handle. I find it's easier on my hand because I do a lot of cutting. And then you'll want a good ruler. Okay, and I like them, or like rulers, excuse me, that have 1/4 and 1/8 inch markings. So some people like rulers that just have 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch markings. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about our fabric and how we really need to have our fabric set up. To do this technique, I use 2 different widths. One of them is 18 inches by the width of the fabric, which will be 44-45. The other is 1 yard or 36 inches by the same width, which is 44 or 45. So when I buy my fabric, if I'm buying a yard, I usually buy 1 1/4 yards, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my fabric's on straight of grain so that I actually get that true bias. And when you do the straight of grain, what you're going to do is you're going to actually take an end just like this. You're going to cut it and you're going to literally tear. And I know it's very difficult to tear fabric that you just bought, but it's okay. I promise it will be fine. Now what you're going to do is you're going to find that sometimes when you do that, you have let's say in this instance, it's a 1/2 inch difference. So how do I really square that up? So what you're going to do is you're going to take your entire fabric piece, you're going to open it up, and you're going to grab opposite corners. So my bottom left corner and my top right corner, and you've got this odd shape, almost like a triangle. You're going to literally just stretch it to pull it out. And then you're going to go and you're going to grab the opposite corners, your top left corner and your bottom right, and you're going to do the same thing. You're just going to stretch it to straighten that grain out. And then when you fold your edges together, you will see that you are perfect on both sides and you're set and ready to start cutting your bias. So I'm going to show you on the 36 or the 1 yard piece how I cut these bias strips. So I have my selvage end and I have my fold end. I'm going to rotate my fabric so that my fold is on my left, my selvage is on my right, and I'm going to open it up so it's one big piece of fabric. Take my bottom right hand corner, and I've got this edge here, which is that cut edge or that tore edge. I'm going to bring it to that center fold. Okay, and then I'm going to repeat on the left side. So it's almost like you're back in 1st grade, kindergarten, 2nd grade, and you're making that really basic kite. So now you can see I have that kite or that the airplane that we used to make as kids. Now I'm going to take my top right corner and I do the exact same thing. So what happens here is because my selvage is sitting here, if I fold this over, matching up, sometimes this edge tends to pop out a little bit. So when I fold that, I put my hand underneath so that I ensure that that edge remains even with the edge on the bottom and that my cut edge is still on that center fold. I'll do the same thing with this top left corner. Bring it down, match everything up. And then I have something that looks like a kite. One more step. We're going to rotate it to the right. So now I have a square. Now because my mat is a little shorter than the length of my square that I created, I will take my bottom edge, and I do this at home all the time, so it's okay. I fold it up, make sure everything is tucked in. I have no ridges. And now I am set to go ahead and cut my bias. Straighten these edges up. And I'm just going to trim off the edge here. Let's see, right here. I'm going to get rid of this fold. And I'm just going to cut that off. So I use 1/8 inch piping. It's my favorite piping, or you'll hear it referred to as cable cording on everything that I do. It just gives it a nice, fine, clean edge. So what I do is I cut my bias strips 1.5 inches. So I'm going to measure over 1.5 inches, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to cut. And I'm going to cut a couple of them because I am going to piece them together to create that long strip for my cable cording to create my piping. Now, when I open these up, you can see that I have, by that stretch, that is perfect bias. The other great thing about this is that if you look at your ends, I have perfect angles on all of my ends. So when I go to my machine to sew them together, I have my tips out on each edge so that when my seam is created, I have a perfectly straight bias strip, the entire length of the bias that I'm creating for my piping. This is probably all I'll need for this particular project. So what I'm going to do is, rather than unfold all of this, put it back in my bin and try to remember that I have it. I actually have a bin at home that says bias strips on it. So what I do with this piece is I literally fold it, and I fold it one more time, just fold it up. And now this goes into my bin, and it's ready for my next project that I'm going to use this color because it's one of the colors I use a lot of, and I don't have to refold everything. It's just ready for me to go on the next project.